Hi friends, good evening and welcome to the Peace Quest Forum's second event this season. I'm very happy to see you guys and our theme, hi Beth, welcome. Our theme today is kind of philosophical. I suppose when you are a senior, you know, that's the privilege. Come closer, Ed. Yeah, let's be intimate. Just come. It's the privilege of being a senior citizen is to become a little bit of a philosopher, having seen and lived and thought about many things in life. So the theme, today's theme, is exclusion or embrace, because these are very interesting and deep concepts, about the human story and the human journey. If we go to the biblical and the Abrahamic tradition, we all learned about Abel and Cain, brothers, and so our trials and tribulations, they are just part of who we are as humans. So exclusion or embrace? Whither the human race? It's the question. Where are we heading? After all this journey, have we learned a few lessons? Or are we going to reproduce the agony and the tragedy and are we going to change? Are we going to consider transforming our ways of, perceiving ourselves and the other? So, and when, the other side is that this is, I said, a 21st century perspective. I have always been, for the last 25 years, as a thinker, as an advocate for change that makes sense, that respects, people's yearnings, legitimate yearnings, all people, that the 21st century will either be a century of maturity and therefore of transformation and change for the better, or will not be. In other words, we will all go down in flames. Basically, these are the choices we have. So this is the theme of tonight. I will first share with you a short movie called Planet Earth, and I just chose the part that shows us the beauty of the planet. And we humans, we are supposed to be the guardians and the protectors of this beautiful planet. So the question is, you experience that. I just show that, and then I will come to address the theme. But before actually the movie, I'll just tell you that a very good colleague of mine, Christian friend, he's a Christian scholar in Yale, and he's from Croatia. Croatia. Yeah, and he wrote this book. That's which inspired me the theme of tonight. The book is.
I am very busy today. I cannot.
This is a Croatian book. You should be part of this, really.
Yes, I like book. Tomorrow
It's okay.
I'm very busy. Must prepare paper.
No problem.
Read
No
the
problem.
time.
No problem. So his book is entitled Exclusion and Embrace, and this book is a winner of the 2002 Louisville Graham Mayer Award in Religion.
Louisville, like in Kentucky?
Yeah, yeah. And the author's name is Miroslav Volf. And this is basically a theological exploration of identity, otherness, and reconciliation. Identity, otherness, and reconciliation. Because these are real themes that are important.
We've been lied to from the very beginning, though. You know that.
No, please, leave the questions for the Q&A later on. So, before we go to the movie, I would like to just read this small piece to set the tone for our evening. It says, life at the beginning of the 21st century presents us with a disturbing reality. Otherness, the simple fact of being different in some way, has come to be defined as in and of itself evil. Miroslav Volf, the author, contends that if the healing word of the gospel is to be heard today, and I would add the Old Testament or the Quran for that matter. I mean, the whole Abrahamic, this could be a Christian, he's a Christian scholar, but it could be a Muslim scholar saying this or a Jewish scholar saying this. It's basically challenging our traditions from inside out. So he contends that if the healing word of the gospel is to be heard today, theology must find ways of speaking that address the hatred of the other. Reaching back to the New Testament metaphor of salvation as reconciliation, Wolf proposes the idea of embrace as a theological response to the problem of exclusion. Increasingly, we see that exclusion has become the primary sin.
Seclusion or exclusion?
Exclusion has become the primary sin, skewing our perceptions of reality and causing us to react out of fear and anger to all those who are not within our ever-narrowing circle. In light of this, Christians, and I would add Jews and Muslims, must learn that salvation comes not only as we are reconciled to God, and not only as we learn to live with one another, but as we take the dangerous and costly step of opening ourselves to the other, like I'm doing in this exercise, of enfolding him or her in the same embrace with which we have been enfolded by God. This book is a major contribution to political theology today. Born out of the suffering of his people in the Balkans, biblically grounded and future-oriented to a new human community, it is a great witness to the God who forgives and does not remember forever, creating a new community out of enemies. There is no better theology of the present day context of life and death This is a professor called Moltmann commenting on the book. He teaches in the University of Tübingen in Germany. So now we'll go to the movie. Okay, so we had a visit to Mother Nature, and before we open the discussion and the conversation, I just would like to conclude these reflections by reading to you from this gem of a book, from the preface of the author. He said, after I finished my lecture, Professor Jürgen Moltmann, who I read to you the comment earlier on, stood up and asked he asked the author, who is from Croatia, and who made a speech somewhere, asked one of his typical questions, both concrete and penetrating. This was just after the war, of the Balkans. He said to him, but can you embrace a setnik? Setnik it was the winter of 1993. For months now, the notorious Serbian fighters called Setnik had been sowing desolation in my native country, herding people into concentration camps, raping women, burning down churches. Sounds familiar, huh? I mean, this is like we hear all in the news, all these things now happening all around the globe. Herding people into concentration camps, raping women, burning down churches, and destroying cities. I had just argued that we ought to embrace our enemies as God has embraced us in Christ. Can I embrace a Setnik? The ultimate other. So to speak, the evil other. What would justify the embrace? Where would I draw the strength for it? What would it do to my identity as a human being and as a Croat? It took me a while to answer, though I immediately knew what I wanted to say. No, I cannot. But as a follower of Christ, I think I should be able to. In a sense, this book is a product of the struggle between the truth of my argument, this is the author speaking, and the force of Moltmann's objection to it. Moltmann. It was a difficult book to write. This is the author speaking. The author of this book, Exclusion and Embrace. It was a difficult book to write. My thought was pulled in two different directions. By the blood of the innocent crying out to God, and by the blood of God's Lamb offered for the guilty. How does one remain loyal both to the demand of the oppressed for justice and to the gift of forgiveness that the crucified offered to the perpetrators? Yeah, I felt caught between two betrayals. Listen to this carefully. I felt caught between two betrayals. The betrayal of the suffering, exploited and excluded, and the betrayal of the very core of my faith. In a sense, even more disturbingly, I felt that my very faith was at odds with itself, divided between the God who delivers the needy and the God who abandons the crucified, between the demand to bring about justice for the victims and the call to embrace the perpetrator. I knew, of course, of easy ways to resolve this powerful tension, but I also knew that they were easy precisely because they were false. Goaded by the suffering of those caught in the vicious cycle of conflict, not only in my native Croatia, and I would add Sudan, and you can add many, many other sufferings around the globe. But around the globe, I went on a journey whose report I present in this book. So this book was reporting on that journey. Almost inescapably, the report is intensely personal, even in its most abstract and exacting sections. And by the way, my book, which is on Amazon.com, which is called Nile Sunrise, is very similar because it's speaking about the situation in Sudan. The book is personal in the sense that I struggle intellectually with issues that cut close to the heart of my identity. No free-floating and unaffected mind is trying here to resolve an intriguing intellectual puzzle. I chose not even to try the impossible. I, a citizen of a world at war, and a follower of Jesus Christ, in my case of Islam, and somebody else's case Judaism or Buddhism or Hinduism or whatever, could not hang up my commitments, desires, rebellions, resignations, and uncertainties like a coat on a coat rack before entering my study, to be taken up and put on when the work of the day was over. My people were being brutalized, and I needed to think through the response appropriate for me, a follower of the crucified Messiah. This is the author. And for me, for example, the Quran very clearly, God gives Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, an order. He said, "We have not sent you but to be a mercy to the world." So, when I compare this order with what some of us are doing in the name of Islam, of course it makes me mad. So how could I abstract from my commitments, desires, rebellions, resignations, and uncertainties? I had to think through them with as much rigor as I could muster. The tension between the message of the cross and the world of violence presented itself to me as a conflict between the desire to follow the crucified and the disinclination either simply to watch others be crucified or let myself be nailed to the cross. An account of an intellectual struggle, the book is also a record of a spiritual journey, and I underline this spiritual journey, because at the end of the day, more and more I think about all these issues. The emphasis for me is really about spirituality, and about our identity being, having a spirit, each one of us having a spirit of the divine in him or in her, and how can we rekindle that? Just the two lines, and then I'll open the floor. I wrote it. This is the author speaking. I wrote the book for myself, and for all those who, in a world of injustice, deception, and violence, have made the gospel story their own, or the Quran, or the Old Testament, and therefore wish neither to assign the demands of the crucified to the murky regions of unreason, nor abandon the struggle for justice, truth, and peace. With that, I finish these points, and it's open for the conversation. And feel free to.
All peoples as children of God.